Okay, okay. And
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Mohammed. Sorry, let's see if I get my sound to work.
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
I mean, right.
Can you hear me?
Okay, can you say something?
Something.
Okay, I take it that you do hear me, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I see now. Why it is not working. Okay. Sorry. Hello.
Hey. That's fine. Hey, Nathaniel. Hey, Alice.
hello, morning, evening, afternoon, some time of day.
Yes.
Hi, Doug.
You here?
Hi.
Hello. Sorry about last time. I literally was moving during last week from one house to the other. So.
Well, you know, that's going to take priority. If you have to move house, it's difficult to be on a meeting.
I thought that on that day that I could finish part of the moving and then sit to have the call, but it was too late before I. Yeah.
No, I've only moved twice in the last 20 years, and both of them were extremely stressful and tiring. So no.
Well, hello, everyone. It's nice to see all the friendly faces again today.
Right.
Did how did you all decide to join the call today? Was it a ping that you saw, or did you sort of just remember it was there? I'm just trying to gauge like how I can remind more people if that's a helpful thing or not.
Ping on my part. I literally heard a noise writing something else and went, oh, I can listen to that.
So with that Slack, when I just pinged it like a few minutes ago, was that something else?
No, I'm not in the Slack yet. It was
Yeah.
a calendar event for me.
Oh, okay, cool.
On my end, it's been I've found out about the weekly FreeBSD calls on Discord, and then following some of the conversations in the Beehive and Jail's calls. I found your posts on LinkedIn, and then I said, ooh, and here I am.
And I think this might be the first one you've joined. Is that right, Matthias? I don't recall.
Sorry, excuse me?
Sorry, and this is the first time you've joined this call, I think, if I recall
Absolutely.
correctly. And so do you know folks on this call, or are you new?
So I definitely know Doug from by name, not personally, but yeah, I've been following his work for some time. Apart from that, not really, I must say.
Well, you're very welcome. It's nice to have you here. Thank you for coming. Should we do a short round of intros just so that we can get acquainted? I mean, really, the main part of the call is just to see how folks are getting on with trying Podman on FreeBSD, but I think it would be nice to know who we're talking to a little bit, if that's possible. So I can go first. My name's Alice Sowerby. I live in the UK. I work part-time for the FreeBSD Foundation, and I'm a program manager. I'm helping to run some of the testing project, some of the structural bits of it. Doug, do you want to go next?
Sure. So my name's Doug Robson. I've been a member of the FreeBSD project for too long, making me feel old again. So I've done all kinds of things in the FreeBSD project, a lot of kernel work in the early days. I did some of the early 64-bit ports, which is an important step because we were running up to the limits of 32-bit platforms. More recently, I've been interested in getting Linux-style container workloads to work well on FreeBSD. And as one path to getting that functionality, I've been porting the Podman stack. So that's Podman, Scopio, Builder, and associated tools. That Podman is not the only way that we can go for this. Containerd works, but needs some love to bring it up to the same functionality. And going forward, there's a Kubernetes specific container engine called Cryo, which I've also been working on porting, and that would allow a fully native FreeBSD cluster, or alternatively FreeBSD worker nodes in a multi-OS cluster. I think that's about it for now. Yeah.
Go to Noor.
Oh, okay. Well, you can just cut my name short to Noor. I think that's the easier one. I'm originally from Cairo, Egypt, but I live in the Netherlands now since 2012. Came here first for work, but then got married and settled. Moved to the second house just last week. I'm actually not taking any official part in the FreeBSD community. I'm more volunteering, hopefully later by doing more to become a part of that great community. In my day job, I'm a software developer, the standard stuff, Java, Python, and JavaScript, using Linux workloads mainly. Got interested, of course, into FreeBSD through friends some time ago. Tried first in desktop, didn't work a bit, but then come back again, and it's actually getting quite a lot better. I've now have my fully running laptop with actually 2 GPUs. It's very great. And given the some time ago I knew about that jails that, and I was really surprised how come that is there for like almost more than 2 decades, while just Linux containers just got all the attention. So was trying to know more about it, also as a way to contribute more to the FreeBSD community. Got to know about Dog as well. I think through Dave mainly, if I'm not mistaken. He shared some links about articles.
Yeah, Dave is a kind of a connector for a lot of things.
True. I went to the FreeBSD, the EuroBSD-Con in Vienna, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. I've been to the tutorial from Dave about jails, got hooked more. And when I got to know more about Doug and his work, I said, yeah, I want to be, or to do something with that. Kindly, he gave me some part to focus on, which related to containers networking. The Podman stack, they're moving from CNI to their own kind of network stack called Netavark. It's not the easy way to get it started, but it drives me to learn a lot from basically very core level. And through that also got the chance to learn more about Rust, which is, wow, can say kind of a hype also at the moment, but it's good. Yeah, that's about it. Sorry.
Yeah, as I said the other time, I'm longtime FreeBSD user, now kind of in a weird not system administrator role, which just got weirder this week. But I have an interest in this particular project because it might save me from having to let my users control Docker instances that can take down servers when they're misconfigured. And any chance I have to make an interesting project a little more fun to keep me interested in all the talking to people in meetings, a little bit of button pushing is good for the soul.
Thank you. So I've been working on I'm software developer / data engineer since the late 90s. I started using FreeBSD on the server in the early 2000s, and I've been sticking to that since then. Been using FreeBSD desktop since 2010, something like that. And I moved from being freelance around 2014 to moving to working in the more enterprise settings, which means that I had to leave. To keep FreeBSD more on the personal side. I've never really been able to bring it to my different settings, or very much on the fringe. And I've been trying to find ways to leverage the Docker hype and let's say the few working parts or positive parts of the Docker ecosystem, namely the ease for people to write Docker files and compose, and see how that could be replicated on the FreeBSD side, because my experience is that this is one of the main blockers, at least for people to start considering using a FreeBSD based workflow. though there are more, of course, more things after that, though a lot of them also have been disappearing as blockers along the years, especially now that you can get certifications with FreeBSD, and you can make it something that people can think about. But that part about, you know, the ease of comparable ease is the part, the sticking, still the first sticking point. So I've been trying a lot of different things along the year, starting with easy jails like 15, 20 years ago, well, 15 something years ago, and I've tried a bit of all of the jail-based ecosystems. I've been following what you've been doing, Doug, and this seemed like, wow, now we are really starting to get there, and definitely with what I've seen on the HackMD page, it seems that we're actually close enough. I wanted to get the experiment going before this meeting, but it looks like I won't have time to do that. So Noor, you've been moving. I'm actually changing company this week, so 2 minutes plus going to a convention on the weekend, and then 2 weeks to Saudi Arabia. So, but I will do it, right? And I've, in the last few months, I've been working on making FreeBSD, I mean, full FreeBSD workstations for my developer friends and now employees, because I've started my own company with a couple of friends, and I'm looking forward to, and I'm taking steps to use FreeBSD as much as possible, and hopefully get it all the way down to the clients, right? And that's but of course, dogfooding is the first. So I've been dogfooding on the server side and on the desktop side. Now I want to get our employees to do that and get some. So I'm starting to get a nicely automated installation with a good data. I mean, workstation for data engineers and data scientists on FreeBSD. And next steps would be the all the environments where you can build your pipelines and all that stuff. And I'm looking forward to using this the patterns that you've been putting down for that. That's it.
Great. Sounds like you've got an exciting future. Hopefully exciting.
At least an
in the right
exciting present.
Yes. So yeah, I like you, I've tried several of the different jail management systems, and my experience with Podman, and I'm not quite clear on why, is that Podman ends up being a lot faster at starting up new containers, and I don't know whether that's because it's written in Go rather than shell script, but the user experience is better, and that we've actually been getting some feedback on that. There was a group that was using Nomad orchestration with POT to create jails, and they switched to using Podman to create the jails, and they said that they had a better turnaround time. So I don't think it should be, I mean, I'm not doing anything different from POT, really. I mean, it's still jail underneath, but I think that the shell scripts, which is most of the ones which I've looked at, IOCage, Bastille, CBSD, POT, they're all written in shell script, and I think that slows them down a bit. So I think somebody mentioned that jails have been around for 20 years, and
25?
25, yeah. I think the original paper was in the year 2000.
Oh.
So I went out to a conference earlier this year and had a chat with some Linux people who used to use jails, and they told me that it was that their feeling was that jails were used by system administrators to do stuff, whereas Docker ended up being used by developers, and it just changed the mindset. So, people are automating their own workloads, but on the Docker side, people were using it to as their whole workflow. So maybe that's the difference.
I think that indeed what gives the more a boost or more spotlight on Linux container or Docker specifically from amongst all the Linux container ecosystem, that it was adopted more by developers and hence in the more software development than indeed with jails, at least from the outside, maybe not when you look deeper, that it's just for sysadmins to manage things and to as a lightweight replacement for VMs.
That is a perfectly good use case for jail. What was I going to say?
I would say though that there's and also correcting myself before, there are a few in the jail paradigm. There's a few things that are making things more difficult for non-sysadmin users, namely around the whole networking between jails, all of which is very much possible and getting easier by the day. But that's one of the great things, if you want, in the Docker world, and that allows people to build non-trivial experiments or production settings, though they probably shouldn't be in production a lot of the time. And that's the ability to compose and build a whole lab with different services and all that. Part of the problem with jails is also that there's been so many ways to do things. You've named a few, but there's also app jail, and there's also XCM, and so there's a lot of ways. Then there's VNet jails and NetGraph, and not a simple way to compose all this and to unless you are a sysadmin, then it becomes possible.
So I think this is an area where OCI style containers are an important step forward. I mean, it's perhaps with raw jails you can do more, but with OCI containers it's an abstraction layer that hides the implementation. And if with a bit of tender loving care, Containerd can bring its functionality up to the same as Podman, the user doesn't need to care, right? Because it's the exact same thing. You can share images between both implementations. You can share images between Podman and Cryo. So your Kubernetes deployment doesn't have to use a different language than your development environment. It's what's I'm in a way sad about all of the different wrappers around jail is that they all behave differently. You can't share templates between any of them. I think that OCI makes this easier because they've put the work in to write down the specification, and they respect that specification and maintain it, and everyone works to it, and it really helps. And by going this direction, we get the benefit of the existing infrastructure for Linux images, for instance. Image distribution is a big piece of work. It's not that hard, but it's done at scale by commercial companies, and we can piggyback onto that. GitHub runs a world-class container image distribution system. We can use that. Docker, they try to make you pay for it, but again, they've got their own image distribution system, which is again world-class. We can use that because we're using exactly the same formats. And I think the people that generalized from Docker's original implementation to defining what an OCI image was, and what an OCI runtime was, and how these things work together, they deserve a huge amount of credit to which, and without them, I don't think I'd have been able to do this work in as quickly as I have, even though it's taken me years. So yeah, OCI is a really important thing, and yeah, I don't need to say anymore, I think. I still think there was something I wanted to say, and I've forgotten it again. Anyway.
So Matthias, were there any things that you're planning on doing that you wanted some input on?
So oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. I just sorry. It's not really a core question, but why not why as why like in a bad way, but why we're limiting the test project to only 11th of October? Why not making it an ever-going project if possible? Or is there a limitation on such projects with the OCI community?
It was we wanted to time box it just to make sure that we knew what we were committing to. I think more than anything, particularly because of Doug's involvement being so important. And I know that Doug, you're going to be away or unavailable, I think, after the 11th for a while. And yes, but more than anything, it was just to time box it so that we knew how long we'd want to make the commitment. And I don't think we necessarily are ruling out, having more conversations and more, extending this for longer. But it was more of an experiment or a test just to see like what kind of engagement could we have, and like what was the level of interest, and what could we learn from this, so that if we wanted to do more or do it again, then we could build on it. Yeah, those are the main reasons.
Cool.
One other aspect, and this is something which I haven't really discussed with anyone, I just thought it would be a good idea, is that I've been holding back on updating the ports to the latest released version of Podman, so that we can, during the time box testing thing, we can have a well-tested version of Podman. There's been a bunch of bug fixes that we've discovered preparing for this exercise, and during the exercise, that have been applied to the Podman 5.1 port and FreeBSD port, and that's actually a nice stable version. There's some risk about rolling forward to 5.2, and I wanted to defer that until after this time box test period. Yeah, that makes sense.
Is the same true about, because I see that you've been publishing images, publishing images until 14.0, and also one of the first things I did was to update your FreeBSD images script to build a 14.1 version. Is there something that I should be wary of around that?
So I have an update for that, which I haven't pushed yet, to include 14.1. There are some things that were changed in 14.1 that I'm not really clear about. I think some rearrangement in package base meant that the package utility and package bootstrap utility didn't get the right shared libraries. So there are some fixes that were required from that. That's the only issue with building 14.1 images as far as I can tell. So I will update the FreeBSD images on GitHub to support 14.1 properly. And I'm also working towards getting image building into the official FreeBSD release process. So hopefully, if we can get it done by the time 14.2 is released, we should be able to release tables containing OCI archive format images. And from there, it's a small step to getting them into a suitable registry and just making our workflow straightforward, but with trustable base images. And I think that is an important psychological step, an important security barrier for some people.
Absolutely. So do you think there's any chance this is going to bite me if I'm using the 14.1 self-built images right now for this, or should I try to only use 14.0 until the 11th, at least to be able to report things that are useful?
I did push some 14.1 images to Docker Hub and Gray.io last week. Like I said, I have fixes to the build scripts, which I haven't pushed yet. It should work. There's no reason why it shouldn't work for you. The only problem which we had in the past was that there were missing shared libraries for the package utility. And that's fairly straightforward to work around. I mean, we ought to change to just use 14.1 because 14.0 is end of life.
And 14.1 is so nice.
It's got some good things going on there. But I mean, in terms of the base operating system support for containers, all of the changes that I'm pretty much sure that all of the changes I had to make went in ahead of 14.0 even being branched. So since FreeBSD 13.3, we've had pretty good support for the features needed by Podman in the base operating system.
Which reminds me that there was one question I wanted to ask, because in the HackMD sort of bucket list of things to do to start rolling out this experiment, there was a reference to this adding something to the disabling the large the LRO.
Right.
LRO, and I want to look at the sources on my 14.1 and the changes that I think you because this points to a merge which looks like it's not been answered to, or I mean, it's been left there since September or October, November last year. But actually, in 14.1, that code is in the source. So I do understand that it's that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to use 14.1, even if it's on the host rather than on the. But are we aligned that these changes have been changed and that maybe we should?
I need to double check this because there were issues with virtual network devices for Zen and also for Beehive. Similar problems on both. And I'm not sure what the current status of whether fixes went upstream. I will say that large receive offload should never be used if you're running jails or on a host. If you're running anything that requires IP forwarding, you must not use large receive offload. It damages things. It breaks the contract that a router must adhere to. And unfortunately, there were issues where I think if we can compare FreeBSD behavior and Linux behavior on Linux, if you enable IP forwarding, then it automatically turns off receive offloads because they break the contract that's required for forwarding. FreeBSD doesn't do that, and it's been an issue both for host workloads as well as for virtual machines like Beehive. So I think we have some rough edges in that area, and so as a best practice, manually disabling large receive offload is a good idea if your workloads on that host will require forwarding, and containers with Podman do require forwarding.
Yeah,
because of the way that the networking address kind of stuff within containers works.
Okay, and does that do your proposed changes take care of that switching off the LRO properly, or
I haven't tried to implement that, but
okay.
I think we should do that. I think that
okay, so that's still
yeah. So
okay, so
yeah,
I should
there's some room for improvement there.
Changes, I still need to add to my ifconfig the necessary disabling.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
so
definitely
this has
your
been
changes are in 41.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I don't know about before, but they are in 41p5.
Okay. I'll do a check and see what the current status of the 14 branches and what, if anything, is different in current. But my gut feeling is that we've still got some niggling problems here. This is not particularly is not only a container thing. Is anything using VNet jails can have this problem. I've had this problem with IO cage jails running on TrueNAS. Depends on the setup, but I've certainly had this outside of containers.
And if my host, apart from jails, I mean typical use case for me, right? I have a lot of services in jails on my work machines. I usually try to jail my different projects so I can do stuff within with good isolation. But on the other hand, it's still a daily driver. So I need, for instance, I'm sending my I'm doing some ZFS sends. I mean, I'm doing some big data movement from that machine to the cloud and to my other servers and all that. So if I do disable LRO, would those use cases be affected negatively by that?
In my own experience running a lab scale 10 gig network, it doesn't seem to make much difference. It probably increases the kernel CPU usage by a few %. But in terms of throughput, I can get wire rate throughput on my setup, which is by no means cutting edge. So you basically try it. If you have problems, then maybe consider having 2 NICs, one for containers and one which can have LRO, because it's a per NIC setting.
Perfect. We'll do that.
I mean, the specific problem that I've observed is that the host NIC has large receive offload enabled. Packets come into are received by that NIC and buffered by the LRO subsystem and turned into one large packet. This packet then gets sent to the bridge where all your jails live, and the bridge has an MTU, or in some cases the container interfaces, the e-pairs that are connected to the container VNets, they have an MTU which is too small. So the big kind of artificial packet comes into the bridge and bounces, and you get terrible throughput because TCP backs off. You get tiny packets through it, and you get a trickle of data getting through instead of the full 10 gig or whatever your network can do. So this is the contract breaking that I was talking about. The host must not do this if for specifically for NICs that are involved in IP forwarding. Now on Linux, if you turn on IP forwarding for anything, it will disable LRO for all NICs. This is my reading of the kernel source code anyway. I don't use Linux that much apart from testing.
Okay.
As a workaround, I guess you could use jumbo frames. That will help.
Yeah, a few percent of CPU is a good price to pay. I think it's not a problem. I was more worried about throughput than anything else. So
It's certainly possible with relatively cheap Intel NICs to saturate 10 gig Ethernet without seeming to load the hosts up too much. But yeah, test with your workloads and make sure. But that's my experience.
cool. So is VNet used in? I mean, with the I haven't really looked at the details. Is the Podman build implementation leveraging VNet on the?
Absolutely, yeah. So if we look, I'm looking at a Docker, a Linux running a Docker container. Each container has a private IP address that's private. Usually, it's private to that host, and then there's a NAT set up by Docker itself to translate that to translate that to the host IP address, so the outgoing packets are natted out to appear as if they come from the host. And this is a very useful pattern because all the containers on the host, because they're attached to the same bridge and they have carefully chosen addresses that don't conflict, they can talk to each other without any problems. And they can also contact external services because they're natted to appear as if they're from the host. Then with something like Compose or even just on the command line, you can expose container ports on the host. There's a redirect can happen so that I can connect to whatever it is, port 80 on some host, and it can be pushed through into some container. And that's a very useful workflow. So to get all of that working, it may have been possible with loopback, I guess, but it was really easy to do it with VNet because it's so similar to the way that things work on Linux. They have almost exactly the same thing with slightly different names. So they have a virtual bridge. On the virtual bridge, they create a pair of VF devices. One of them is put inside a network namespace. The other one is added to the bridge. It's exactly the same concept with VNet jails. You create an E-pair, you put half of the E-pair onto a bridge and half of the other half into the jail. So everything just worked. I had spent a little bit of time porting the software that is used on Linux to set this stuff up. And surprising that it took a bit of time to debug it. I guess I spent about a week on it, but I've barely touched it since. It works really well.
Okay, and are you familiar? Or familiar enough with the NetGraph implementation to have some sense of if it would be equally easy to use NetGraph?
I think I haven't looked at it that closely. So leaving aside Noah's work on NetArc. With the CNI system, the CNI is basically a set of plugins that do parts of the work for setting up container networking. So there's a plugin which will create a bridge for you and manage the e-pair kind of relationships. There's another plugin which will allocate host local addresses that don't conflict and so on. That's used by the bridge nodes. So all these things fit together. And in my implementation, I created a plugin that manages FreeBSD's own virtual bridge, not the NetGraph one. And I created another plugin that will set up the network address translation rules with PF. There's no reason why somebody or even I shouldn't implement a plugin that's similar to the bridge one that I already wrote, but actually uses a NetGraph bridge. No reason why that wouldn't work very well. I haven't bothered because I'm not seeing performance limitations of my setup, but I'm not pushing the limit of that setup either. So if we have workloads where NetGraph would behave better, it may be worth implementing a CNI plugin that will do the NetGraph thing instead of the if bridge thing. And it should.
So to give a little bit of background also on why I'm asking about NetGraph, one of the, and I have no clue how widespread the use cases I've observed are or not, if it's only me or more people. But one of the challenges has been to run on the same host, Beehive and jails. And when I say challenge, it's not that it's difficult or that they don't work well. It's about simplicity, because in the end, you need to be able to get all your environments properly orchestrated. So whether it's so of course isolation is very easy, but when let's say that you have some services that make sense to run on a Beehive VM and some others on a jail, and to be able to create and also if only to maintain one bridge, one paradigm of bridging and organizing those communications, that I think makes things. I've run into the difficulty that it becomes, you have two different implementation of the same things, and it would make sense to use only one. And Shining Vartanian and Daniel Bell seem to have a lot of success doing exactly that with NetGraph. And Daniel Bell wrote I don't know if you're familiar with the name, probably. Yeah. He wrote ngBuddy, which is just no, it's not just a proof of concept, but it's let's say a basic implementation. And another thing I have on my list of things to do was to start testing this ngBuddy for Beehive and jail collaboration. And if that theory holds out, that would be one good reason for me why it would make sense to look at a NetGraph plugin.
So, there's a lot of things going on around in my head in this conversation. So narrowing things down to specifically for containers, I think that I would feel uncomfortable about using the same bridge for some VM workload that I have been running on the host and the container workloads, because CNI manages the IP addresses, and the failure mode that you need to avoid is for the Beehive instances that are sharing that bridge need to respect whatever address range is being used by CNI. So there's a bit of juggling there. It's not impossible. It's just getting the config file to be correct for both. So it would simplify things in my head to just keep them separately. On the other hand, for non-container workloads in my lab, I have jails and Beehive VMs and Zen VMs all on the same network segment. And I just use DHCP to give them addresses, and that kind of works. So for the jails of VNet jails, the Beehive instances use tap interfaces, and I just can, on the same host, I can put the tap interfaces into the same bridge, and it kind of works. A little bit manual for Beehive in my setup, because I don't really use any of the helper scripts, but that kind of works. Long term, I'd like to be able to figure out the best way of getting container workloads to run inside of Beehive, because the better isolation and the more flexibility about having a different kernel for the container workload. And in that setup, I think it would be possible to safely have both types of workload on the same bridge, because they could be set up to use compatible CNI implementations to make sure that the IP addresses don't conflict. I mean, I'm not quite sure what NetGraph would do that would help any of this, other than perhaps be faster. I think there are potential performance gains from NetGraph at the high end compared to IFBridge. There's been a lot of discussion recently about IFBridge and the suggestion that IFBridge is single-threaded for moving packets around, which might be a limitation, again, for the high-end workloads that I'm not really running. Yeah, so I think it's worth looking into implementing a CNI plugin that does what I'm already doing with IFBridge, and seeing if that works better for some workloads. But I haven't run up against limitations with my current setup yet. So it's kind of on the priority list, but way down.
And what is your plugin written in?
It's written in Go. Mostly because there are helper libraries to make writing CNI plugins fairly straightforward. So marshal the required setup into the plugin and marshal the result back into the container engine. All of that stuff is boilerplate, and I didn't have to do anything. It's all I needed to do is write, I'm going to say maybe 100, 200 lines of code in Go to do what Linux was doing, but do it with FreeBSD primitives. So container networking plugins are all written in Go. Podman, Builder, Scopio, and all of the associated libraries are all written in Go. And they behave pretty well. This is my first experience writing large amounts of code in Go, and I don't really like the language, but it works, so it's fine. And in my personal kind of testing, it seems to be quicker than the large shell scripts that we use for gel management outside of this workflow.
You need to try out Rust now.
Rust, I've been Rust curious for a long time. I think it's got some really good things going for it. I think there is some hype around it, but I think that Rust itself as a language and is well designed, and when used correctly can write safe code.
Yeah.
On the other hand, ARM Morello and all the Cherry BSD things is a fundamentally better solution for security because it happens in the hardware. So I want to have an ARM processor with Cherry extensions as my desktop one day, and I think that would be a better solution than forcing everybody to change their entire tool chain and rewrite all of their code. But one of these days I'll try and write some code in Rust. I have to stop myself, otherwise I get I go off into the weeds and nothing else gets done.
Well, they actually have, besides Network, they have also runtime Yoki. That's also written in Rust.
Okay, yeah. There's
the
also conmon-rs. I started trying to compile that the other day and got stuck and stopped. So conmon is, for people that are curious, is a tiny monitoring process that runs alongside each Podman container, and it's also used by Cryo. And it manages access to the containers console. It logs output from the container on the host to record what's going on. It monitors the life cycle of the container and captures the exit code of the container process when it exits. It's written in C, it's really small, and just works. Conmon-rs is a re-implementation of that. And for Kubernetes type workloads, conmon-rs can do some of the heavy lifting of grouping containers into pods. That's its main added feature, over and above being written in a safe language. Unfortunately, when trying to compile that, those are the parts that just won't compile and need significant amounts of work to adapt to the way that we're implementing pods with nested jails. It's not impossible, it's just work. Any other questions about the current state of things? I guess for the people on this call, they may not be at the stage of being able to know whether or not there are missing features that would prevent them from being able to use this. But that's one of the things that we wanted to get from this whole exercise, is to get people to try using the stuff and tell us which parts were missing, which parts were working well. That's great, but what bugs they find, what features that they would need to move perhaps some piece of software from Linux containers to FreeBSD containers. Basically, as we work our way through the standardization process for OCI runtimes on FreeBSD, we want to capture as many real-world use cases and address those use cases as we write the specification. How to translate a container into an equivalent jail setup for FreeBSD.
So that's definitely the plan on my end to move. I have two large-ish family of use cases that I can leverage for that. One is our internal tooling, where I will have a lot more freedom than anywhere else, because it's it's for us, so we don't have to. I still have to contend a little bit with, because I'm with the rest of my associates, because I'm the only FreeBSD convert there. Though I'm introducing these FreeBSD based workstations, so hopefully they will stealthily become addicted to. And then the other is on the client side, where we have large data engineering, data machine learning, and data science processes, which require a lot of CI/CD orchestration, and a lot of airflow and stuff like that. And I want to try and run all of this, at least have parity, so that we can have a choice between the two and be able to test. And hopefully then I can show them that it's safer, faster, and so many orders of magnitude of headaches less than having to go through Docker. So that's going to be my plan. I mean, that's my plan right now. So obviously, between now and the 11th, I will only be able to do some test runs of that. When do you plan to be back, roughly?
So let's see. I'm going to be back the week of the 20th of October. Just going on holiday for a week. My availability in that week from, I forget, so I think it's from, I forget whether the Monday is the 20th, but that week I'm going to be kind of spotty with things going on there. After the week following and the rest of the year, I'm available. So don't worry about the time boxing of this. We'll keep the GitHub repository for the OCI Playground, and we can create issues there and communicate there, or just send me email. That always works.
Cool. And hopefully, if this works out the way I hope it will, because I think we're really at a watershed moment where we can, these low-level friction blocks, if they are lifted, it would open the door to something which is so superior to in so many ways to the Docker paradigm. So hopefully, if that's the case, then we would even have some funds to allocate to that.
Cool.
So hopefully that helps.
That's definitely something which has been a driving goal for me, is to make it easier for people to move from Linux to FreeBSD. Give them some of the familiar tools. There will be things that they miss, but hopefully we can fill some of those gaps. And having a Docker work-alike, or even one day maybe getting the Docker engine to work natively. It uses containerd. Containerd already can work. It needs a bit of work, and a few improvements here and there. But there's no reason why actual real Docker it couldn't be run on a FreeBSD host. Podman is good though. I like Podman for not having to have a giant binary running as a daemon. We have lots of tiny conmon binaries, but they don't do anything other than like record stuff. Yeah. So, but making it so that someone coming into a FreeBSD shop can say, "Hey, how do I run container workloads?" And someone says alias Docker equals Podman.
Well, that's like a nice little sentiment to leave it on, the vision for the future. It's so nice to hear Q&A with Doug. So much to learn. All right, well, that's really great, and thanks for suggesting, Doug, that we can kind of make it like a an end to the official testing period, but obviously like an ongoing conversation around what people are looking for. I think
that would be a good idea.
helpful.
At this stage in maturity, I think we thought that having a separate GitHub where we can have FreeBSD specific issues and field them separately and triage things that needed to go upstream to Podman would be helpful, because they've been really nice to us, and I don't want to bother them with loads and loads of bugs for FreeBSD that they don't really should want to support. So we need to support the FreeBSD Podman, and otherwise we start to lose goodwill upstream, and I don't want to do that. Anyway, thank you everyone for turning up. It's been interesting. Last couple of weeks we haven't had quite as many people turn up, so it's good to have a few people to just chat about the containers and stuff. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Hello.
See you next
Thanks a
time.
lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.